So yeah, the as you were saying, there aren't very many artist villages. It's not like you find an artist village just like that. And um, I'm coming to the voice at a much later age, as you were saying. Some of your students are coming in at the age of 50, and one of the things in the last few years, as I've actually jumped into music, was actually a trajectory towards the arts. So see, I didn't have it's great for me to hear that, because growing up, I feel like I didn't have that particular, the art village and an artist family. So it seems like a lot of trajectory of my life has been bringing me here, and some of those elements I had to just sense that those were important and to create them, meaning that starting to hang out in art collectives or places where artists gather. And in hindsight, this is becoming clear to me. But of course, when I was doing that, it was figuring out pieces of a puzzle, and also observing artists as to how they live their life. And one of the things, this has only been in the last 3-4 years, but I started to see a template, because I spent a lot of time with entrepreneurs, but there was a parallel between artists and entrepreneurs, because I saw most of them, oftentimes younger artists, struggling, trying to find their way, having a very strong love for their art, and trying to find out how to make a living through the art as well, and not giving the art up. But also there was something very magnetic being surrounding with artists and in collectives where they were expressing their creativity. And I say that because slowly I noticed that over a couple of years, from seeing performances and being steeped along with friends who were artists, the desire started to come, okay, now I have to spread my wings and actually try to become an artist. It was not articulated in that way, but I feel like I would never have had the desire to start an artistic path until I was exposed to a lot of artists.
But most people I know didn't live in a village, an artist village, or opera singers came from families that had nothing to do with classical music, or played an instrument, and people have different backgrounds, and they discover art and music in different stages in their lives, and it could be sheer luck. You went to a concert and you were enlightened by a musician, and you say, "Ah, I have to play this instrument. I love that harp or the saxophone, or I must play jazz." Or, it happens to people. It's like a disease. It's like they're being kind of like, they feel attraction that they can't even explain. And it can come in different ages. It's not just in the age of 8 when you decide you want to be a pianist. Most children have no idea what they want to do. And their parents tell them, you learn an instrument and you practice the piano, and they say, okay, I have to do that. And especially with singing, very few children start very early. I don't really work with very young children, because I think that they should sing in a choir or sing in wherever they want, but it takes some maturity to sing, and even more maturity than to play an instrument, because the instrument is in the body, and the body grows and changes and develops with the years. So an instrument of an 8-year-old child is not an instrument of a 12-year-old child or 20. And the instrument changes and grow with us, and the hormones changes, the whole atmosphere there, and things happen. I do believe in music education, and I think it should start in a very early age. That's great, but it's never too late for singing, and it's never too late for music education. And if you explore that, when you discover that and you decided to do the stages you need to do, which like hanging around artists, understanding how they live, what are their habits, or what are they attracted to, what do they eat, what do they drink, all kinds of things you want to learn from artists is You came to it when you were ready for this. You probably were not ready when you were 12 or 13. You had different life. And you brought your maturity and wisdom into what it is right now, and or a few years ago, and that was the right time for you to start singing. And that's what I believe anyway.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like there are very many subtle elements, and it's another cliche is, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And I've started to trust that process, that when we're really asking for something and when we're ready, then the various elements start to conspire and show up in
Mhm.
our life. So um, since you said something very interesting, you said that you had decided at one point to take away, as you were speaking about your poetry, that you put it on the side and just focused on the opera um, for perhaps a long time. And is this something that you also advise to your students? Was this a conscious decision that you made?
I tell you, I think that um, artists go through phases in their lives. And supposedly, if I was a sculptor or a painter, I would have times where I discover certain material or canvas, or I want to paint on wood, I want to paint, I don't know, abstract, or I want to paint a flowers or whatever. And artists do have the right to change their mind. They go through periods. If you go to every big name of artists in the world, they had their periods and they changed and they learned and they were influenced by the culture after the war, before the war, all kinds of things. And when you are a singer or a classical singer, you are you have your canvas, metaphorically. If you go with the metaphor of an artist, and you have your canvas and you have your materials, and for a certain time, if you want to develop technique in that kind of genre, you need to spend time to learn it, how to work, how to do it. In singing, when you develop a classical mechanism or classical singing technique, it takes time. It takes time. It's to do with teaching, educating your muscles and teaching them, like sort of kind of like exercise that become their muscle memory, and you develop it like an athlete. An athlete will develop muscles, and these muscles will serve him in that particular field of sport that he chooses to do. But if you ask him to change the field and become, I don't know, a footballer, becomes a runner, or a swimmer, it's completely different setting. It's the same muscles, but they do completely different functions. So they need to relearn. Maybe it's easier for an athlete to do this, to transit from one area of sport to the other, compared to a non-sportivic person. But still, they need to re-educate the muscles. So when I chose to become an opera singer, in the background, I wanted to be a jazz singer. I wanted to do pop singing. I was, brought up I grew up in the 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s. There were great music out there. Contemporary music was wonderful. I wanted to be, I can drop names, but I loved Carole King. I liked Johnny Mitchell. I loved the singers very much. I still do. I appreciate that they were my inspiration, but I needed to be on one track at that time, because if I would just go all over the place, I would not be able to develop that technique for what I wanted to do. And I must say that later on in life, when this technique was established, I was ready to move to other techniques. And I do suggest that to my students, learn something, invest your time in something, and know one thing, at least for a period, and then decide if you want to move to the next genre or style of music, and especially when you're a child. And I don't know, some people would contradict me, and there are places where they say you can teach everything at the same time. My experience says that it's very confusing. There's a different technique to each style, and it's best to concentrate for a few years in one and then move to another. And then you can combine them. I can sing both things because my instrument is flexible enough to move from one technique to the other technique, if I want to, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is I'm also relating with this, or beginning to, at least in my own experience, starting to understand this, that how important this is in my own vocal training, to really focus on one thing and just receive the lessons and build the foundation. So this idea of having a solid foundation is starting to assimilate, but it's taken a while because it also seems like it's such a vast field, and particularly in music, the ability to listen, for example.
Mhm.
Um, it's so many countless hours and dedication to build that, and it seems later perhaps one could apply that to many genres.